We are talking about baritones. We needed an alpha male on the show, and since Weston is not here, our
Noted alpha male Weston Williams.
Yeah.
On the Dallas Opera Network, you're listening to Opera Box Score.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Wherever you are, however you're listening, it's America's talk radio show about opera. It's Opera Box Score. I'm your host, George Cederquist, joined by Oliver Camacho, Matt Cummings, Ashlee Hardgrave, and our guest, Michael Rice. All right, in Chalk Talk, Novak Djokovic won this year's men's Wimbledon finals, giving him a total of 20 Grand Slam titles, tying both Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal in big wins. Now, each of these players approaches their game in unique ways, so we take a look at three baritones who are tied in greatness, but bring very different qualities to their game. Plus 2-minute drill, the Black Opera Alliance hands out a red card to Tulsa Opera, and we hand one out to Opera Australia. Dallas Opera Network listeners, don't forget, you're just getting a taste of the show right now. I want to make sure you subscribe to the podcast on Stitcher. Just favorite the show on Apple Podcasts. Oliver Camacho.
I'm still recovering from the loss of Matteo Berrettini, a gorgeous Italian player. Gorgeous with if you want to talk about Thigh Guy Summer, he was Thigh Guy Summer in 2019. So he's the original Thigh Guy. And those of you who saw the US Open in 2019, you know what I'm talking about. See-through tennis shorts.
They're all nodding to themselves right now.
Matt Cummings, the beard gets bigger.
Yeah, we're bearing down into summer, so why not get even more hair? That's what I say every year. No, just this year, really.
Ashlee Hardgrave, great to see you again.
Likewise, it's good to see you too. My condolences to you on your heartbreaking loss yesterday.
I'm utterly heartbroken. I cannot tell you what yesterday was like, other than that it always comes down to penalties, and Italy was by far the better team. Michael Rice in the house as well. Great to have you here.
Thank you very much, George.
What's going on with you, sir?
I'm out here in California, in Long Beach, living the life, not post-pandemic, but no, everything's fine. Still doing the podcast opera now with Oliver every now and then, so things are good.
Fantastic. Thanks for hanging out with us tonight.
Absolutely.
Let's talk some opera.
Chalk Talk on Opera Box Score.
Novak Djokovic came back to beat Matteo Berrettini in 4 sets in the Wimbledon men's final. The Joker is now tied with both Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal with 20 Grand Slam wins. That's matches at Wimbledon and the Australian, French, and US Opens, if you're counting. We take a look at three baritones who are each great, but in very different approaches to their craft of opera. Oliver, you had described this as an all-court player, a jock, and a stylist.
I mean, that's not entirely fair, but I was thinking about.
Who said you were fair?
Yeah. and then why did you say it?
I was thinking, it was inevitable that Djokovic was going to win. He's winning everything these days. He's almost impossible to beat. And he probably will surpass Federer and Nadal in Grand Slam titles when it's all said and done very easily, even this year. And he even has a chance of getting the golden Grand Slam because he could win the Olympics and the US Open. And that has never been done before by a man. So I think Serena Williams did it. I'm not sure. So we are thinking today about baritones because we rarely talk about baritones. And because we are talking about baritones, we needed an alpha male on the show. And since Weston is not here,
Noted alpha male Weston Williams.
Notorious.
I thought I'd bring on my co-host from Opera Now.
Oh, Christ, that's alpha.
And so who is Novak Djokovic most like in the pantheon of great American or great baritones of the second half of the 20th century? The first half of the 21st century haven't been established yet who are the great ones, but we definitely have some great baritones from the
first
second
tenth of the century.
Yeah. Who are the people that are most like Nadal, that are most like Federer, and are most like Djokovic? So I'm going to go ahead and posit that Rafael Nadal is a specialist on clay court. and he's beautiful on clay courts. He does everything well, but clay courts are his home. Much the same way Piero Cappuccilli is the Verdi baritone of his generation. And when you think about Verdi baritones, you want the voice to be warm and beautiful. You want it to have good line, and you want the diction to be clear, the Italian diction to be clear. And you also want to have that thrust that's necessary in those big moments in Verdi operas, like when Amonasro curses his daughter, or when Renato in Ball and Maschera sings 82, or in Cortigiani, for example. And just go to your YouTubes or your Spotifys and listen to Piero Cappuccilli sing those moments in those operas. I mean, the tone is always so beautiful. He sang those roles over his entire life, and he got better at them the older he got. I mean, he took care of his voice so well. And you think something like Nadal, like there's no way he can keep it up, but he continues to win the French Open every year, just the way, except Djokovic won it this year. The
Djokovic is on you.
Easy come, easy go.
Just the way Cappuccilli was able to sing, those great Verdi roles all throughout his career, and just made them more and more beautiful the older he got. I will go ahead and pass over to Ashlee to see who she thinks is closest to Djokovic, the all-court guy.
Yeah, the all-court player in terms of the baritones that we're talking about in...
I should say all-surface player. That's what I meant to say.
That's it, all-surface player.
It's more PC.
In terms of the baritones of the last half of the 20th century, mine is technically a little bit of a gimme because his career got started right before the second half of the 20th century began, but we're going to go ahead and roll with it. Is somebody who's kind of an all-skate when it comes to music, and that is Robert Merrill. He was also one of the Met's enduring and leading Verdi baritones, but he spread himself out a lot. He did not restrict himself to that part of the repertoire. He made his home at the Met. He did sing a little bit in Europe and a little bit in South America, but he really focused on, once he got on the roster of the Met, that's kind of where he stayed. It gave him a chance, though, to branch out and do some things that might have possibly brought him a little more commercial success. So before he was at the Met, he was doing things with the NBC Symphony Orchestra. He was singing bar mitzvahs and weddings and the Borscht Belt. Once he got on the roster at the Met, he decided to take a little bit of time away to try to do some film and some nightclub and some TV arenas. It got him into a really famous falling out with the Met's general manager, Rudolph Bing. And after he did some disastrous films, which we can talk about or not, he decided to come back and really take his place as one of the leading baritones on the Met's roster. So he was very well known for his recordings. He did that 56 Bohème with Sir Thomas Beecham that everybody really likes. His timing lined up exactly with when stereo recording came to be. So he, in addition to the Met, he's really got his foot in terms of recording. But he was not afraid to be on television cameras. He was not afraid to be on TV shows. He actually started his career as a semi-professional baseball player. So he had a big, sports theme kind of running all the way through his life in ways that we can talk about. But he was a guy who had a lot of different hats and his hands in a lot of different buckets and pots. So for someone who is universally good and didn't just specialize in one specific thing, I'm going to go with Robert Merrill.
Including over 500 performances as Tevye, I believe.
Correct. 500
right,
is Tevye to match his 500 total performances at the Met.
Make that money.
Now he is a rich man.
Fun fact, Michael, he never sings those ad-libs the same way ever. In the 500 performances he did, those verbs and those little, ditties are always different.
It's probably some of the stuff he ad-libbed when he was singing in Italian, when he would butcher the words. Probably.
Yep,
He was very used to that.
Yep.
So, Matt, this is a gimme. Who was singing around the same time as Merrill and the same time as Cappuccilli that we would call the stylist?
So if you're talking about stylist and baritone, predictive text would literally finish this sentence for you. That Siri knows that you're talking about Dietrich Fischer-Dieskau, German baritone born in 1925, who throughout his career did sing opera as well as oratorio, but really is renowned for his lieder interpretations. The German songs of Schubert, Schumann, Mahler, Brahms, that was really his bread and butter and really where he stood out from the pack in terms of his competition during his career, making hundreds and hundreds of recordings. He made 8 recordings of Winterreise alone over the course of his career. So
Just 8?
I know.
I think Bostridge is up to 3 right now, so...
The new Grand Slam. How many Winterreises can you get in before you pack it in?
Oh, God. Murder me.
Good call. Bad call. On Opera Box Score.
So much tennis and so much baritone in 1 hour-long episode. It's great.
It's a
Good
lot of
call.
balls.
Thank you. Good call, bad call. We're going to start with Oliver Camacho.
Bad call to John McEnroe, who always puts his foot in his mouth. It doesn't even realize he's doing it. But at the Wimbledon final, in the preamble to the match, he said something along the lines of like the last time, it's been like 45 years since an Italian won a major, forgetting that Francesca Schiavone won the French Open in 2010. So it hasn't been 45 years. It's only been 11 years, but he doesn't think of women as equals, I guess. Good call to Des Moines Metro Opera. Friend of the show, Gary Guido, just gave the prima of Plate. And if you sniff around social media and look for production stills of that show, it looks amazing. The cast is incredible. And I'm just so happy for French Baroque Opera to be brought to Iowa.
Matt Cummings.
I was poking around to see if Anita Rachvelishvili's Russian song album had been released yet, and it is. But that's not the end of my story, because I also found a new recording that just came out of highlights from Porgy and Bess with Marin Alsop and the Philadelphia Orchestra, and the cast is phenomenal. It's got Angel Blue, Lester Lynch, Chauncey Packer, Kevin Short. Those are just the top billed names, too. Like, I'm going to be listening to this all week.
I want that.
Ashlee Hardgrave.
Good call this week to the Goodman Theater here in Chicago for their next step towards live theater, where they're broadcasting live theater on the internet. So they're starting Ike Holder's play I Hate It Here, directed by Lillian Brown. It runs this weekend, Thursday through, I believe, Sunday. So if you're itching for some live performance, but you're not quite ready to get out and about, or you're not in Chicago, you can get a ticket to the Goodman I Hate It Here by Ike Holder.
Bad call, of course, that England lost that final. Good calls. I got huge hopes for the World Cup in 2022 with that side. All right, that's it for this week's edition of America's Talk radio show about opera. Our announcer's Norm Woodel. He's at normwoodel.com. On Facebook, search for Opera Box Score. On Twitter and Instagram, we're at Opera Box Score. Help us deepen that bench of listeners by liking and sharing our social media posts. Email us your hot takes on the stories we're talking about, operaboxscore@gmail.com. And again, subscribe to the podcast on Stitcher. You can just favorite the show on Apple Podcasts. The views and opinions expressed on Opera Box Score are solely those of the show's creative team. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of the accounts of this show without the express written consent of Opera Box Score is subject to VAR review. Our creative consultant is Oliver Camacho. Our audio and video editor is Weston Williams. For your co-hosts, Matt Cummings and Ashlee Hardgrave, and our guest, Michael Rice. I'm George Cederquist, asking you to continue the conversation about opera as you dry your tears of loss or joy or boredom. We're back with an all-new show next week when we go inside the huddle with the folks at American Baroque Opera. Plus you get more opera headlines, more hot takes, more dink shots. Join us.